Around the year 1600, the Chesapeake Bay was described as pristine. So in less than 400 years, we've completely turned that around. It's going to take much more than 400 years to bring it back to what it was. But it doesn't take 400 years for us to start making small changes.
We do this for our local environments, for our local water quality, for our kids, for our grandkids. It's something we've ignored, and we're paying a little bit of those costs right now.
The Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in the United States. It's the third largest in the world. What makes it unique is the fact that it has a unique composition of flora and fauna that you can't find anywhere else in the world. That unique composition creates a situation where it provides environmental services for the local area that we can't replicate anywhere else. When we say, is someone who isn't living on the bay, how do they have a connection with the bay? The tributaries network is so vast in the Chesapeake Bay watershed that nearly everyone who lives in the Chesapeake Bay watershed lives within 15 minutes of a tributary that then directly feeds into the Chesapeake Bay. And so we're all connected.
Lancaster County's primary source of pollution are our farms. We have a lot of farmland in Lancaster County, and we have a lot of animals in Lancaster County. So the density of animals and the manure that they produce is a real problem for Lancaster County.
The industrialization of agriculture has sort of created this environment where it's standard to use the broad application of pesticides and fertilizers. And so when we have a major rain event, or even one that's not so major, the water then washes in any of those excess fertilizers and pesticides into the watershed, and it contributes to the proliferation of algae that can then choke off the oxygen that's available for fish. Add that together with the fact that pollution is introduced from other non-point sources like failing septic tanks, for example, or stormwater that carries anything and everything from bacteria and hazardous toxics to just plain old mud and sediment.
Nitrogen out of the air contributes about 1/3 of the pollution in the Chesapeake Bay. The airshed for the Chesapeake Bay is actually about 540,000 square miles. It's much bigger than the watershed, which is the land area that contributes pollution. Most people don't really think about that, but that's why it's important for us to do things like rake our leaves rather than use leaf blowers, because everything that we put up into the air is going to come back down in a form of pollution, either here or further out.
We can't just point to farmers and say, well, this is your problem. It's just your problem, and if the farmers fix up their practices, then we're going to fix the bay. It's much bigger than that. We all have a hand. Individual citizens have a hand in the activities that are contributing to the degradation of the bay. So we rely on the bay for so many different things. So the easy stuff first, right? We really like going there. We like going on vacation there. We like to be doing recreation on top of the water. We can put a price tag on some of those things, right? We know that it will be really expensive if the bay is eventually so degraded that we can't travel there for tourism. We will have to incorporate the cost of what it would be to go someplace else.
The reason that it's sort of on the impaired waters list and that the federal actions are sort of in place at this point, predominantly the phosphorus and nitrogen lead to algae blooms, which reduce the dissolved oxygen, and every summer a dead zone sets up in the center of the Chesapeake Bay, and a significant percentage of the volume of the water in the bay, 40, 50, 60% in bad years, is uninhabitable by the aquatic critters. So it really impacts all the aquatic life. It affects commercial fisheries, recreational fisheries.
So there are lots of things that Lancaster County citizens can do to reduce their impact on water and water pollution. One of the most basic is that when you see one of those storm drains along the side of the road, nothing goes in it, right? It's specifically for stormwater, so nothing goes down, not grass clippings, not trash, not anything other than stormwater, right? We should just be ignoring them. The second, and one that's really easy, is to pick up after your pet, right? So many of us have dogs. We love Fido. We think that there's nothing that they could possibly be doing that is contributing to water pollution. And even if our pet is really healthy, their waste carries really harmful pathogens. So even in a healthy animal, it's really important that we're picking up after our animals every time. Most of the time is not enough. We have to do it every single time.
Some residents are starting to do little things like putting in pervious decks or pervious patios, things like that, pervious driveways, things that are actually going to help soak up the rainwater that rather than just let it run off.
In addition to that, if you have a lawn, then we want to think about not fertilizing or applying pesticides to our lawns. And if you feel that that's a necessary thing, that you're doing it under the guidance of a professional so that the over-application of fertilizers and pesticides is not going on in our lawns. In addition to that, we can think about conserving water, right? If you have a lawn, don't water your lawn or don't wash down your driveway. And if you feel it's necessary, you've got a new lawn, you have to start watering it, to do it before dawn or after sunset so that you reduce the evaporation. You're conserving water in that really important way. So there are some other things that you can do. You can drive less and walk more, right? Your heart will thank you for that. By driving less, you are reducing your air pollutants, which we know eventually makes its way into waterways.
Plant trees. That's another great thing that people can do on an individual basis to make a difference. Trees help absorb stormwater. They also help with the hydrologic cycle. They can store water during times of drought. So trees can make a big difference. They also help with the air deposition.
You can also buy more locally produced products. By buying more locally, and knowing what you're purchasing, being a more informed citizen and voting with your dollar, then you're saying, I choose to purchase products that are not going to be contributing to more air pollution through the transportation, the delivery of those products, but also in knowing who your farmers are, right? What are their practices? Are they participating in the best management practices that are not contributing to water pollution? Instead of thinking about regulation being the end-all of solutions for controlling water pollution, we have to think a little bit more about how society has changed our behaviors and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so if we think about littering, right, it used to be very common practice to just throw your trash out your car window as you're driving down the street. Now that's just not socially acceptable. If someone sees you do this today, they're going to say something about it, right? Never mind the police pulling up to your car and saying, hey, I'm going to fine you $300 because you just threw out your trash from your window. But rather your friend is more likely to say, why did you do that? So it's social changes that are going to change this, right? What about the day that one day we can say, why aren't there any dandelions on your lawn? And that's not okay, right? So the day that we say that dandelions are acceptable to be a part of our lawn is the day that we've started to make changes and know that it's okay to have naturally occurring plants on our lawn.
For decades, we've talked about cleaning up our water, and we've never made the investments that we're committed to, by and large. And I think, you know, it's right now a tough economy, but to get started on this process in a more serious way is really important. And again, you know, the Bay aside, you know, I think we do this for our local environments, for our local water quality, for our kids, for our grandkids. It's something we've ignored, and we're paying a little bit of those costs right now.
Around the year 1600, the Chesapeake Bay was described as pristine. So in less than 400 years, we've completely turned that around, and it's taken less than 400 years to degrade it to a point that it's less than 20% of what it used to be. It's going to take much more than 400 years to bring it back to what it was. But it doesn't take 400 years for us to start making small changes in the things that we can do in our everyday lives that will help to contribute to improving that quality.